We're back. Mitch Belisle, Ryan Boyle.
Nearing the transition from indoor to outdoor here.
Yeah.
It's getting close.
This episode of Trilogy Office Talk is sponsored by Scaffolding Removal USA.
Oh, I was going with the but
No, we haven't secured that sponsorship. Scaffolding Removal USA. Appreciate all your efforts. My scaffolding came down this morning in front of my apartment. I really appreciate everybody's efforts. Looking forward to seeing actual sunlight out of those windows. So yeah, shout out to our sponsor, Scaffolding Removal USA.
Yeah, you block them, we chalk them. So
that's right.
Making that transition.
Yeah.
We got NLL playoffs kicking off this weekend.
Yep.
We've got PLL Draft coming up. So we're
Yep.
going to talk a little bit about the best lacrosse players in the world. We'll start with the NLL. San Diego at Buffalo.
That's right.
Calgary-Halifax. Georgia-Saskatchewan. Rochester-Vancouver. I had a little homerism and picked my Ottawa Black Bears to make the playoffs, and they were, unfortunately, the first ones eliminated by virtue of, or one of the first groups to be eliminated by virtue of Georgia's win. So Georgia punched their own ticket, which glad to see for Eddie Kamau, our old coach.
Yeah.
And that team, they've done a nice job. Everyone else, we were correct on in our picks, we being me. So feel good about that. And I think we got an exciting playoffs lined up here for the next few weeks. Any games that you are particularly excited about?
let's start with the headliner. Bandits Seals 1-8 matchup. Seals been there, done that. We've gone into their barn. We've gone into their barn and beaten them in their barn. So I think it's just rinse and repeat.
Send
18,000 people home.
Yeah, exactly.
Sad, crying, unhappy.
20,000 Bandits fans getting that place to quiet down. Maybe the best feeling in the world.
The best.
The thing that I was blown away with is how many times has Wes Berg stepped up as a clutch player? And I went back and looked. 5 of their 9 wins, he scored the game-winning goal. 4 of those was like the only game, like it was a 1-goal game, and he scored the game-winning goal. And it's almost the same thing every time. It's like sweep across the top, stick it top corner. If you are a team playing Wes Berg and it's a tie game, do not let him get the ball anywhere in your offensive zone in the last 2 minutes because he's going to score.
He's, I've said it before, but he is a cornerstone player, right? He is a franchise guy. And I think, when from the outside looking in, any team he's on, like you want him on your team, right? He just wins. He does all the little things, the things that get the headline, right? The big goals, the game-winning goals, but then he also does the gritty work. He picks up a tough loose ball. He gets back on defense to prevent transition. So he's just a guy that you look at. He just does the right thing consistently over and over and over again, and that's why he's such a key player and such a cornerstone of the Seals franchise and really for any team he's on, right?
Well, and you talk about doing those in-between things, little things. Like the other guy that I think of when you bring up that kind of player is Zach Courier, who's also now a Seal.
Right.
So they have the benefit of those two. But this Buffalo team is just an absolute wagon. A little bit of faltering towards the back half of the season, but when they get hot, it's just like there's no weak links in their offense, their defense. Matt Vince in goal.
Love Vino. Vino's got a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, I think as does all of Banditland. But also, so looking back, but Buffalo. So this would be a three-peat if Buffalo wins.
Yep.
The last team to do that was Rochester, back in the original Rochester Nighthawks days, backed in goal by Matt Vince. Also on defense, Paul Dawson, who's now with Buffalo. So they've got guys that have been in this three-peat situation before, arguably in the most important position, goalie, and then Paul Dawson might as well be a goalie. He used to be a goalie. Now he blocks all the shots when he's not out there.
Let me ask you this. Given the playoff format, I think the one-game elimination in the early rounds, obviously, I think that favors the underdog.
100%.
Right?
100%.
You got to get one.
Exactly.
Right? You got to just get one. It's a winner take all.
You play your best game the right night, and all of a sudden you're in the semis. And for Buffalo, they have one of those off nights, and they're on the outside looking in. But I think this team is gonna come loaded for bear and ready to go in front of 18,000 strong in Buffalo.
Right, you mean the Seals. So perfect. We move on. Let's move on to the next game.
Calgary-Halifax, this is the biggest toss-up, I think, of the weekend. Halifax has had that, can't quite get over the hump. Usually it's been losing heartbreakers to Toronto. Now they've got to face Calgary, who's really surged with the, Dixon coming back in the mix and Dobie just playing out of their minds. So this is a team that the Calgary team has really surged this year and kind of gotten back to the old Calgary. And Halifax, they're like boom or bust, like score 20 goals or not be able to stop the ball.
How much of the Nick Rose pickup for Calgary, how much has that kind of changed the trajectory of their season?
The goaltending situation is so important in the season and then especially in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Nick Rose has that experience. He's shown he can be an NLL goalie of the year. That is really shored up the one area they really needed the help in.
Yeah.
And clearly they've had success and rode it into the playoffs. And now I think, it's going to come down to, can Nick Rose continue his strong play, and what is the Warren Hill that shows up? Because that's the one thing with Halifax. When Warren Hill plays his best, unbelievable. When he doesn't play his best, they can struggle. So that's going to be, the goaltenders will really dictate the outcome of this game. The last time these two teams played was the first game of the season, 18-17 barn burner.
Who you got in this one?
I'm taking Calgary. I think, like you said, Nick Rose, former teammate of mine, and has just shown that he can win in the playoffs in those clutch moments. And I think Rosie and the black and gray are going to take this one.
Next game.
Georgia-Saskatchewan. This one, throwback to the last time I donned the indoor pads. Saskatchewan versus Georgia 2017 championship. This Sask team, I remember talking to the coaches 2 years ago, and the coaches were like, this reminds us of those 15, 16, 17 Sask teams. Really young, really fast, push it from the back end out.
Yeah.
Frank Giuliano got him in net, and he has really done a nice job of kind of shoring up that young defense. The defense is incredibly fast in transition. They push the pace, and the offense is like a whole bunch of guys that are I compare it almost to an expansion team. Where they get a lot of B+ guys.
Yeah.
That and Ryan Keenan, not a B+ guy, but not superstar guys yet. And they all work so well together and complement each other well, and they're able to get the job done offensively with a lot of help from transition and defense. And this is a team that's very dangerous right now against a Georgia team that has, again, been up and down, but you never count out Lyle Thompson.
I was going to say, they still have Lyle Thompson.
And Miles is back, so they've got the brother connection. And Jeremy's on that team,
So, what is your former team? What do they need to do? I mean, you laid out the kind of pathway or the strength of Saskatoon. But what are the Swarm, your old squad led by Eddie, obviously front line by Lyle. I remember talking with different players, with their teammates with Lyle, and they're like, if you have Lyle, you have a chance.
Yeah. Andrew Q has been a bright spot, as has Brian Cole. They're going to need their secondary scoring to step up and have Lyle have a great game. And then Dobson in net. That's the big thing. We talked about goalies. In the first two games, goalies make such a big difference. When he is hot, as we saw in the PLL a couple of years ago, it's just impossible to get the ball by him, and they're going to need that against this really, really fast, aggressive Saskatchewan offense.
Yeah, I'm not betting against Brett Dobson in any playoffs. I don't care if it's PLL, NLL, throwing trash into a trash can. And if it's a playoff, Brett Dobson playoffs, he's different. Who you got here?
I'm going to go with the Georgia boys, of course. Got to stick with it. I mean, I got to go with what I know. And again, this is where that one game mentality, go up to beautiful Saskatchewan this time of year, sun shining, Georgia kind of weather.
The only time.
Yeah, it's the best time to be there.
All right, next game. What do you got, Mitchie?
Rochester versus Vancouver. This, I think, to me, this is kind of my favorite storyline of the year. Christian Del Bianco has wanted to play for Vancouver probably his whole career, but really sat out, 3/4 of a season in an attempt to get back to Vancouver. They finally bring him in.
And it's been a completely different story.
6-0. He is. So they were, defensively, I was looking back to try to see the stats, the goals against. So they were strong. They were holding teams to low numbers, under 10, 4, 5, 6 goal games. Yeah. But since he has been in, you can just see not only do their defensive numbers stay about the same or get a little bit better, but offensively, he outlets the ball unlike anyone in the league.
Yep.
He gives them that confidence to push the pace and get the ball up and out in transition. And they've just been, like you said, another team 6-0 since he started. They have not lost, and I think this is a team that's ready to keep cruising with Kurt Milewski at the helm.
As a former defender, how does your mentality change when you have a goalie that's good and serviceable and gets the job done, and you've won some games versus lost some games, versus a guy that is elite and is now undefeated? Like, I gotta imagine your mentality changes as a defender to a degree.
Yeah, you just don't feel like you have to be in the gloves every time, or if you make a mistake, it's not going to guarantee to be a goal or be a pretty good chance of being a goal. It's like when you make that mistake and there's a pretty good chance your goal is going to bail you out, you just have confidence to play freer, not necessarily like make mistakes, but to play freer so you're not so worried about it. And I think he gives that confidence to his defense, which that defense is like all just monsters. Owen Grant is just like a tank of a human being.
He's a monster. He's a monster.
And he's just one of like 7 of them that are like the 6'3", 220 build. So,
do you feel like they have enough offensively?
They do, and they've got some young pieces. And Keegan Ball, when Keegan Ball goes off, he's 7-8 points a night. So I think they can put it all together. Kevin Crowley's been doing it in this league for a long time. So they got some really
shout out to the big cat.
They got some really strong tools. I think they're gonna keep rolling, and I think we could see Vancouver in the finals here.
Whoa!
Yeah.
So not only a first round over Rochester, but you think.
I think they're going to go to a 3-game versus either San Diego or Buffalo. So, NLL playoffs.
Where are we watching, Mitch? Where are we watching these playoff games?
ESPN Plus.
You done with NLL? Can we talk PLL now?
Let's go PLL.
Draft
Take
coming
it outdoors.
Up Tuesday, May 6th. So, I've been doing a lot of my preps. So far it's been a really focusing in on kind of their off seasons. And then laying out kind of what team needs are really from a macro perspective. And I think we'll kind of dive into that as we get closer to the draft and look a little bit more micro. I think you look at the draft as a whole. Number 1 overall pick, Water Dogs. We've kind of joked around about it.
Is there any scenario? List me one scenario where CJ Kirst does not go first pick.
I don't want to speak it into existence, right? Because there's only one.
Yeah.
That's it, okay? And we're not gonna like Voldemort.
Him not playing, right? That would be the way.
Like Voldemort, we're not gonna say that, So you look at the rest of the first round, and I think the team that's the most intriguing is Redwoods. They got pick number 2 and 3, so I think a lot of what they do there then kind of dictates like a set of dominoes, right? Right behind them is Cannons. They need a lefty attackman. Like they've needed a lefty attackman last year. They tried a whole whack of guys.
Then they went with 3 righties.
they went with 3 righties. They've done a bunch of different things, right? They've got Will Manny coming into camp. They're gonna look at somebody young that can fill that either now or for the future. So the top 2 guys are Owen Hiltz out of Syracuse and Coulter Mackesy at a Princeton. So I think you look at which direction, what style of play do they want to go? What flavor do they like? What kind do they think fits their culture? So they're going kind of lefty attackman there. And then right behind is Chaos. They, real quick, if you don't remember anything last year, remember they ended their season scoring 1 goal.
It was a tough outing.
They need offense.
That was July, right?
They need offense, right? So they're gonna basically be sitting there at 5 and like, who's the best player kind of left on offense? So then you get after Cannons and Chaos, and then you got Atlas, Whipsnakes, and Archers. And you look at those 3 teams, specifically Atlas and Archers. I mean, they're a lot.
What does the Archers need? That might be a sell situation.
Right. So I think like you just start looking at kind of best available, and I think that's why we're going to get more team needs down the road. So you look at kind of best available. The big picture thing though is like we talk about Kirst. Last year there was these huge headliners, right? O'Neill, Schellenberger, Kavanaugh, best draft ever. And this draft it's cursed, right? But I think there's more depth in this draft. I think so. The rounds are going to get interesting later on. I think there's more depth to this draft as opposed to the headliners. And then you look at a lot of the team needs, and like those aren't things you draft in the first round. Like a lot of teams need short stick defensive midfielders. Like last year, the first short stick to go was Bo Pettersson in the second round. does somebody take a short stick in the first round?
Which hasn't happened in quite some time.
You know, since Roman Puglisi.
Yeah.
Right? And before that, it was Zach Goodrich, and he played for the Cannons that year, not in the PLL.
MLL, yeah.
So, you know, a face-off guy. Like, I don't know if there's a face-off guy coming out of the...
Not a Trevor Baptiste, Joe Nardella.
If you're not beating Baptiste, Nardella, T.D. Erlin, are we just kind of... And, like, Luke Weirman kind of... He did, you know, he made a splash there. Like, are we just kind of horse trading? Like, are we just... And then goalie-wise, you know, some teams need a goalie. You know, Liam Entenmann was a first-round goalie.
Right.
Do you see Emmett Carroll out of Penn, you know, McNaney out of Maryland? Like, are they first-round worthy?
Yeah.
You
got like a lot of like solid A players across the board, right? Not as many A pluses, but a lot of solid A's.
So I think you're gonna see that first round, some offensive guys. No surprise here. Just a premium on like who's the best offensive guy that I can take, and then I'm gonna address a team need later on because there's not as much value in those. And like the guy that I want, am I really gonna take him in the first round?
Yeah. And who you got on kind of the top of your defensive board?
You know, you look at Lavelle.
Yeah.
I think obviously also out of Penn. Scott Smith. You look at the pole position. Virch out of St. Joe's. McDonald out of Maryland. Ware out of Virginia. Like real nifty between the lines. Can do a lot offensively. Is he as good of a cover guy? So those are the names I think defensively that have been kind of popping up and kind of you just look at those teams play. Those are the guys certainly on the list.
We talked about needs a little bit. We kind of high-level overview. What team has to have the best draft here?
Oh, that's a good question. I think you look at the Redwoods, right? And the year that they had and the offseason that they've had, which like half of the team is out the door and half the team is like new guys. They have 3 of the first 10 picks, right? You look, and so their ability just to have an infusion of talent right away. And you think back of the turnaround that like the Outlaws had, right, in last year. And then you think back 2 years ago with the Cannons when they were like left for dead and, Holman came over and Lyle had left. And what are we going to do? And they turned their complete season around from year to year, coincidentally not through the draft. But you look at the Redwoods and all their offseason moves, 3 of the top 10 picks. I think they've got to nail those 3.
Anthony Kelly putting his mark on the team.
Anthony Kelly and Trader Joe Spallina pulling the strings as general manager. So I think that's the team that I'm looking in on. The most. They've got 5 picks overall. I think if you look right below them, Chaos, they got to do a lot with little. They only got 3 picks. And then Water Dogs, 2 and 8 last year. How many of them were by 1 goal, right? Yeah. So 2 more saves or 2 more goals and their season looks completely different. They've got 5 picks and the first pick overall, and then they've got 2 in the second round. So they've got 3 of the first 15, right? So if they can nail those picks, does that completely change their season as well? So those are the 3 teams that I think if you put a premium on where are they going and have to hit, those would be the 3 that come to mind. Does that answer your question? You asked for 1.
That's great. That's great. Well, we'll dive deeper in the coming weeks, but appreciate the overview and looking forward to some great lacrosse coming up this week.